again to the channel. Now, today we want to continue from where we stopped, all right, in the last video as regards our GitLab CI CD 0 to hero. Now, in the last video, I talked about, three things that we need to understand when it comes to GitLab CI CD. I said we have the GitLab instance, we have the GitLab Runner, and we have the GitLab executor, okay? Now, the GitLab instance is more like the gitlab.com itself, right? Which is basically where you host your repository. So that platform itself is what is regarded as the GitLab instance, okay? Now, the GitLab Runner is basically a server, right, that basically helps to execute, all right, your jobs. Now, the executor is what is responsible, all right, for actually executing all the commands, all right, that you specify in your job. Okay, so the instance is your repository. The runner is a server where your job runs on, and on that runner, you have what you call the GitLab executor. Now, there are different executors when it comes to GitLab, all right, CI/CD. As we can see here, we have this Docker executor. And this Docker executor is using, all right, the Ruby image, right, the Ruby Docker image. Now, if you don't have any understanding about Docker, all right, we're going to talk about that. Okay, maybe we're going to have maybe a series on that later. But of course, it's a whole topic on its own, basically. Now here, this runner is basically executing our job using what? The Ruby image. All right. So basically, our job is executed or is running inside, okay, of the Ruby image. So which means what GitLab does is that every job is basically executed as a container. And as soon as the job is done, that container is discarded automatically, right? So nothing is basically left on the runner. Okay, maybe, it's a shared runner. So which means they have different people, all right, that are using basically that runner. I mean, it's not your own runner. It's basically a runner that is provided to you, all right, by GitLab. So of course, as soon as a job is done, what they do is to delete, all right, and just clear out everything. And that's why you can see here that after the old job has been executed, you have what you call the cleaning temporary files, cleaning up project directory, and file-based variables, right? It does all that cleaning up. So that, if anybody else wants to use that runner, all right, your own job will not interfere, all right, with the job of the other person. So basically, that is what GitLab, all right, does for us, okay? Now, we need to also understand a few things, right? How do we actually, set up our own runner, right? How do you set up your own instance? Now, GitLab is such a wonderful platform. Basically, they offer three tiers, right? Basically, they have three offerings. There's the free, there's the premium, and there's the ultimate. Okay. So the offering basically is there's the gitlab.com, which is basically more like the instance now. And then there's the self-managed, and then there's the GitLab dedicated, which means you can also host a GitLab repository on your own server, right? As a company, right, you can also have your own GitLab instance that looks exactly like what you can see on my screen, where you can manage your own repositories yourself. You can manage everything you can pretty much do on the gitlab.com platform. You can also do it, all right, on your own self-hosted, all right, GitLab instance. Right? You can manage your repositories, you can do all of that. Okay, you can do all of that with it, and that is why you see it here as well. So which means you can use the gitlab.com if you want. You can also do some self-manage, or you can also host your, self-manage, basically you hosting your GitLab platform yourself. And then the GitLab dedicated, which basically more like, they offer you that service, but this is dedicated to you, all right, and just your organization alone. And that is one interesting thing about the GitLab platform. Okay. So now let's see how we can host our own runner. We want to use our own runner. We don't want to use a shared runner. We basically just want to spin up an EC2 instance, all right, and manage our own runner ourselves and determine, all right, the kind of executor, all right, that we want to use. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's see how to do that. Now here, if you come here to settings and then you go to CI/CD, all right, so you're going to see a lot of options here. So there's the auto DevOps, there's the runners, artifact variables, and all of that. Now, under the runners, you can expand that. If you expand it, you can see some instance runners here. And under the project runner, you can see that this project does not have any runner of its own, basically. Okay, but this project is using some runners that have been enabled by GitLab. All right. So here you have about 102 available runners. Okay. That, I mean, basically shared runners that this job can actually use. All right. And then these ones does not seem available, right? All these ones here does not seem, it says runner is still, last contact was 4 months ago, which means this runner is actually not available. All right, but these ones that are in green basically means that the runner is online. All right, so I mean, so these all those green ones are the ones that that can be used by any of our jobs. Okay, they are shared runners provided to us by GitLab. So how do we add our own runners? I mean, I don't want to use shared runner. I want my job to run on my own runner. How do I go, all right, about that? Okay. Now let's go to our AWS. Okay, so let's go to AWS. Let's spin up, all right, our own instance. Now this instance is going to be our runner. And then by the time you now install the GitLab runner on that instance, you now have to register that runner with the GitLab, all right, instance, all right, the GitLab, platform. Okay, basically you register your runner, all right, with the GitLab platform, and then your job, all right, can then run on your own specified runner. So let's quickly see how that can be achieved. Now, first thing first, I'm going to come here to my security group, and then I'm going to create a security group, all right, that will basically just allow port 22, all right. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to come here and then say GitLab, all right, GitLab, runner SG, all right? So basically GitLab Runner security group. Okay, so I have the default VPC, so I'm using the default VPC. So I'm going to click on add rows, and then here I'm going to say SSH port 22. And for simplicity's sake, I'll just say from anywhere, all right? So let me just copy this, and then let's create a tag. All right, and then let's create a security group, all right? So now security group has been created, so I can go back now to my instance, all right, and then launch an instance. So I'll click on launch instance, and I'm going to call this GitLab Runner. Okay? And then of course I'm going to go with my Ubuntu. All right, we're going with Ubuntu 24.04, right? That's the latest Ubuntu version here. So we're going to go with that. Just confirm. Okay, and then of course, let's stick with the T2 micro. All right, let's stick with that. That will still do what we want to do. For the key pair, we don't have any key pair in this region, so I'm going to click on create a new one. And then I'm going to call this GitLab, all right, runner key. Okay, and then I'm going to say create key pair, and it's going to prompt me to download, all right, this runner. So I'm just going to download it inside of my training folder right here, and then I'm going to save that. Okay. So for this one, I'm going to click on edit, all right? So I'm going to click on select existing security group, and then I'm going to go with this GitLab Runner SG that we created, all right, earlier. Is that okay? Now, one thing that we want to also do is basically, all right, so let's launch an instance first, all right, before I show you what I want us to do. Okay, so click on the instance. The instance should be running already. All right, so the instance is running already. So I'm going to click on my instance, and I'm going to click here on connect, and then I'm going to click on SH client, all right, basically to log in into my instance. So I'm going to open up my terminal right here, all right? So I'm going to open up my terminal on my system to connect to my instance. So first, we'd have to navigate to where we have our key, all right, downloaded. So my key is stored in the training, all right, folder, all right, and then I'm going to grab this, all right, I'm going to put it here, all right, to connect to my instance, right? So I'm going to say yes. All right, so now we've connected to our EC2 instance right here. All right, now, so what do we do? How do we install, all right, these runner? That is basically what we want to see now. Now here, I'm going to click on this documentation, basically install GitLab Runner using the official GitLab repository. I'm going to put the link of this, documentation in the video description, so you can go to that page, all right, and also follow what I am doing. All right. So here, of course, we're installing on Ubuntu, so we have to follow the instruction, all right, for the particular operating system that we're using. Okay. So I'm going to scroll all the way down. And then here it says for Debian / Ubuntu, all right, /mint, this is what we should do. So that means we have to copy this first, okay, and then we have to install that, right? So then we're going to press enter, all right, and that is running apt-get update. So let's see what happens with that, okay? All right, so it's doing some kind of installation on the background. Okay, so everything is done. So it says the repository is set up. You can now install packages, right? So basically what the command did for us is to help us to be able to download the GitLab Runner, because I mean, the GitLab Runner is not available in the apt, all right, default repository. So we had to add, all right, the Runner repository to our sources. So if you look at it here, these sources, all right, we basically have to add this GitLab Runner to that source, so that by the time we do apt install GitLab Runner, all right, it's going to pick it up from the right source, okay, without any kind of issue. All right, so let's scroll down, and then here we have the sudo apt install, all right, install GitLab Runner, okay, so grab that and then drop that here. Of course, don't forget to put your -y so that you don't encounter any kind of error. Is that okay? And then go ahead and install your GitLab Runner. All right, now the GitLab Runner is actually running. Now, one thing I want to point our attention to here is that your GitLab Runner and your GitLab instance, all right, should actually run the same version, okay? Should run the same version. I mean, that's what GitLab CI/CD, that's what they advise. All right, your instance, which is the GitLab platform that you're using, all right, and the runner that you are installing rather, all right, should actually run the same version. Okay, so that there won't be any kind of backward incompatibility issues, all right, and things like that. Okay, so now the runner is getting installed. So let's just wait for that a bit. I think it takes a little bit of time. All right, but of course, you shouldn't waste our time, because I mean, we're using Amazon EC2. So there you go. So the runner has been installed. All right, that's the first step. All right, on this journey. Now, once the runner has been installed, all right, we need to register the runner, all right, with our GitLab instance. Basically, we have to bring it here, all right, and come and register it under the project runner. So how do we go about that? Okay, so here I'm going to click on new project runner. All right, so here it's going to give me a tag. So tag basically is a way to identify your runners, and we're going to be using it in the pipeline as well. All right, so I'm going to call this shell. Okay, just put shell there. And here, I don't need to do any other thing actually. So I can just put a tag here called shell, and then I'll say create a runner. All right. Now it is going to give me a certain instruction. So of course my operating system is Linux. So I'm going to select that. So step one, so it's telling me here to say GitLab Runner register. So I need to register my runner, and then I need to put in this URL. So this is the URL of my instance. Remember, we're using the gitlab.com, all right, to host our repository and to do other things, right? So that basically is our instance right there. And then we need this token as well, all right, to impute it. Okay. So now let's go ahead and let's run this. All right, let's run this command. Okay. Copy that, and then you drop that here. So let's see, can we run that as okay. So here, running in user mode requires manual start. Okay, all right. Now this is basically just showing us, because we're not using sudo. All right, so that's why we are seeing this. But of course, let's quit out. Let's try to use sudo to avoid any kind of issues. Okay, so let's just say sudo. All right, drop that here and then press enter. Now it's not giving us all of that drama. So here it says enter the GitLab instance URL, right? So now if it was a self-hosted GitLab instance, then it would be the URL of your, all right, GitLab instance, right? But of course, we're using the gitlab.com. Okay, that's what we're using. So we can just copy this URL right here. I mean, that's safe to do. We don't have any issues. We're not going to encounter any error with that. So copy that. Now here it's telling us to enter the registration token. So we just have to basically come here, all right, and copy this token that we have right here. Okay, so copy that and then drop it here. Now here is saying enter a name for the runner. All right, now this name is going to be stored. All right, so it said verifying runner. So it says runner is valid. Okay. And then so here is asking us to enter a name for the runner. The name is going to be stored in the config.toml file, right? So that's the file that will be used to basically manage the GitLab, all right, runner configuration. So the name we want to put here, let's just say shell, okay? And then you press enter. Now it's telling you to enter an executor. So what kind of executor do you want to use? Now, in the last video, we saw that, our jobs actually use the Ruby, all right, Docker executor, okay? Sorry, you use the Docker executor, but of course it uses the Ruby image, okay, to run our job, right? But there are different executors that you can use. You can use VirtualBox, you can use Docker Windows, you can use Kubernetes, you can use your instance, you can even use SSH, you can use Parallels, Shell is also available. and all of that. Okay, now we're going to go with shell, but later on we're going to change that, all right, to Docker. Okay, because I mean we're going to be using Docker executor to build our images and all of that. Okay, so but here I'm going to just say shell, and then I'll press enter, and it says here that runner registered successfully, and it says feel free to start it, but if it is running already, all right, the config should be automatically reloaded, and it says configuration with authentication was saved in this particular file. So this location right here is, all right, where you're going to be managing your GitLab Runner configuration. Okay, so we're going to be doing a lot of things with that particular config file. Is that okay? So if I come back here now, I should see here telling me that you've registered a new runner. Okay, so now I can click on view runners. All right, and then if I come here, I can see that my runner is actually green. Okay, so you can see that my runner is green. So if I click on this runner now, it shows me that it was registered recently. The version is 17.31. This is the IP address. So this IP address is the public IP address of our instance, which if we come here, right, it should actually be true, right? So here we have 3.200. Okay, so if you come back here, that is it here, 3.200. The platform is Linux, and of course you have all of that. Okay, so the tag here is shell, right? So now the runner has been registered. So if you go back to your instance, you can actually do sudo systemctl, all right, status GitLab runner. Okay, and then you can see here that your runner is active and is running and everything is working as expected. Okay, so now let's see how to run, all right, our jobs using this runner. So let's see how we can use this, all right, runner to run, all right, our job instead of using the shared runner. Okay, now one thing to pay attention to here, let's go back to the CI/CD and let's expand the runner once again. So here we have assigned a tag called shell, right? So that means if I want to use my runner, I need to specify, all right, a kind of tag, basically. Okay, so let's see how that can be done. So let's go back to our code. All right, so I'm going to open up my code here. I'm going to open up my GitLab CI.yaml, or I can go under the build section and then I can click on pipeline editor, all right, to do that. So I can do that either way. Okay, so here I'm going to come here and let's say that, I want to run all my jobs, right, on my own runner. Okay, so here what I would do is basically to come under the stage here and I'll say tags. And then the tag that I give to my runner is actually shell, right? And then I'll come to this other job as well and then say tags, all right, and then say shell. Okay, so basically I'm using the tag, all right, for that particular runner. Okay, so tags, and then I'll say shell. So basically I'm saying that look within my environment, and then if you find any runner with a tag shell, all right, that is where I want my job, all right, to run. That is basically what we're saying here. Okay, and then don't forget the last one also, tags, all right, and then shell. Right, that's basically the tag that we give to our runner. Okay, so here we've done all of that. So we've said that all our jobs should run on our own, all right, runner, basically. So I'm going to commit my changes and let's see what happens, all right, if this would scale through, all right, or not. So once this scale through, then we can go on with other stuff. So let's see what happens, all right, with this. Okay, so pipeline running, imagine, wow, the test phase has passed already. Okay, now, wow, that was pretty fast. I mean, look at that. That was fast. Now, the shared runner that we use, you can see that it took a while, for all of that to run. Look at it. All the 4 jobs completed in 12 seconds. That was fast. I mean, the job didn't have to kill because, it was our own runner. So it basically just ran, immediately, right? So if I click on the run test, let's look at the job. Okay, let's look at it. Look at that. That job executed in just 3 seconds, right? It was queued for 0 seconds. Because it was not a shared runner, right? So, there was no point queuing, right, for some job to complete before this would run, right? So now look at that here. It says running with GitLab Runner 17.31 on shell, which is basically the tag, all right, that we give to our runner. And then the system ID is basically this, okay? And then it's saying using the shell executor and then running on, look at the IP address of our server, right? So this is the private IP. All right, so this is 172.31. So if you go back to your instance, all right, that is it right here, 14.251. and that is what you have here, right? So you can see that it actually ran, all right, on our own runner, not on the shared runner. And that's why you can see the tag right here, all right? And then if you go to the other stages, so if you click here, you can go to any of the other stages, right? So if you click on build, right, and then you click on build image, okay, so you're going to see exactly the same thing. So all that job executed on our own runner, and of course the project file was also cleaned up. So the fact that it was our own runner does not mean, right, GitLab will just leave the job there. It will clean it up after every job, so which means after each job GitLab also clears out all the downloaded files and everything, so that your instance is basically free to run any other job. Okay, so that was pretty fast, and that is how to add your own runner, all right, in GitLab CI CD. Okay, so next we're going to see, all right, other things, other keywords that are essential for us to know, all right, and when to use them. Okay, so thank you so much, all right, for joining me today. All right, in the next video we'll take it a step further, all right, and see other keywords and other things that are essential for us to know as we prepare to run, all right, our first application on the GitLab CI CD. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.